Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This is my reading week from the 31st of March until the 5th of April. And I read a lot of things this week, but lots for different projects. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about 8 things that I've read this week. There were another 4 novels that are for projects that are coming out in the next couple of weeks. And there are also 26 picture books that I read for various projects on Kidlit Joy. Part of this is me trying to bulk film as much as I can during my school holidays so that things are scheduled and ready to go. So when I go back to work, I'm not worried about filming and editing things across multiple channels. We'll see how long that lasts. It's probably not going to last past the month of April, but you know, at least I feel like I accomplished something. All right, so we are going to jump straight in with the books for this video. The first book is a book that I received for review from Hackett. That is Wurrtoo, The Wombat Who Fell in Love with the Sky by Tylissa, Elisara, and illustrated by Dylan Finney. This is a gorgeous First Nations little story in the vein of classic stories like Blinky Bill, which when you look at the illustrations inside, you can see there's definitely been elements of that drawn upon. Wurrtoo is a wombat who lives on Kangaroo Island in his burrow, and he is in love with the sky, and he's determined to set out to try and find a way to marry the sky. And along the way he meets Kula, who is a koala, and the two become friends and they set off together, even though she keeps trying to tell him you can't marry the sky. Like, that's just not something that you can do. And it is their epic journey across Kangaroo Island, trying to reach a special place where he will be able to propose to the sky. And amidst all of this, we meet a whole bunch of Australian animals along the way as they help guide the journey. It's also fire season, so there is the danger inherent with that. But it is about friendship, it is about courage and fearlessness and finding your own way, and it is just a wonderful little book. So thank you again to the publisher for sending me a copy. The other book that I read, and this one completed a couple of challenges, one for my Picture This Readathon TBR, which is up on Kidlit Joy, but also for the Book of One prompt to read a book with orange or red and white and black on the cover for this month. This is What You Need to Be Warm by Neil Gaiman. This is a poem that Neil Gaiman wrote in his role as UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador. Sorry, I forgot the acronym there. And it has been illustrated by various people. The poem was created, I think, by Neil Gaiman actually gathering information from people about what are the things that you need to stay warm. And then the poem was created. It's very powerful and very moving, and it's a gorgeous little book. And I'm really glad that I read it this month because I've had it for a while and I've just kind of been holding off for the perfect time to read it. All right, then I read The Butcher of the Forest by Premee Mohamed, which is kind of a fantasy horror Hansel and Gretel story. In this world, or in this town, there is a ruler called the Tyrant, and his children go missing in a mysterious forest and no one can get them back, and no one in the village will go in after them. Varys, who is the only person to have ever gone into the woods and survived and come back, is summoned and summarily told that she is going in after his children. And it is a strange and scary place full of magical monsters, including a truly terrifying unicorn. It is a place where you cannot negotiate, and if you make a deal, it will probably end really badly for you. It is dark and creepy and spooky and just a short little novella length sort of story, and it was really interesting to read. I think this is a good length for my fantasy horror reading. Like, I managed this. The writing was great and I really enjoyed it. This was a bit of a cover buy, and I'm not disappointed by it. All right, I also read Alcott Hall by Emily Rath. This is the final book in the Second Sons trilogy, which means that is a series that I have ticked off of my book series to read in 2024, so yay. That's not an insubstantial one, it's 548 pages long. This is the story of Lady Madeline, who we met in the first books, which the first 2 books in the series are a duology. This third book features those characters very heavily, but the central characters are different. Lady Madeline has been trying to get married for a few years, unsuccessfully. She is a homebody, she's very quiet. She doesn't really want to get married until she finds out that her aunt, who has died, who she was quite close to, has left her entire estate. But the only caveat is that she has to be married to claim it, and she has to be married by the end of the year. And her family have kept this from her because if she doesn't claim the money, then the money reverts to her father, and her parents are just awful people. They're awful people. And so she runs away to Alcott Hall where her best friend is, and her best friend and her partners take her in. And while she's there, Lady Madeline meets John and Charles. Charles is the son of sort of the village pastor who's come back because his father is dying, and John is the groundskeeper. I think that's the right way of the... This is the problem when I don't have a physical book, I forget which characters belong to which. But anyway, there's a character called Charles and a character called John. This is a Why Choose historical romance set in this little idyllic small town with really fun characters. For the length of it, it is a really fast-paced story. Like, I sped through this. Madeline is determined to have sort of a marriage of convenience, and she has stipulations on it. She doesn't really want to have the intimacy or that, but she wants a partner who's going to treat her with respect and let her manage her finances and whatnot. And she ends up falling in love with both of these men who are already in love with each other and have a very complicated history. So there is part second chance, past new romance, past let's figure out all of our issues, and there are a lot of issues for them to figure out, obviously, but it was fun, and it's Emily Rath, so I think now I only have one Emily Rath book left to read from her back catalogue, so I'll get on that. I also read How to Say Babylon by Safiya Sinclair, which you're actually going to hear me talk about the start of reading this book in a vlog maybe this week, I think. This is a memoir that is an audiobook that I borrowed from Libby, and it is Safiya's story growing up as the daughter of a Rastafarian man, and it is often a very difficult story to listen to or to read. She experiences a lot throughout the course of her life. So it is set in Jamaica, and she lives with her father, her mother. She has two sisters and a brother. Both her parents are Rastafarian, but her father becomes quite militant in his belief as the years go on, and this manifests in the way that he treats his family, his views on women. There is on page emotional and physical abuse, violence and sexual assault, and feeling of isolation. And through all of this, she finds her passion for poetry. Because this is a memoir, and I legitimately don't believe that we have any right to go in and critique someone's life story. What I will say is she is an incredible writer. Like, the way that she wrote her story, but then also narrated it, because she narrates her audiobook. The way that you connect with her story, the way that you connect with her, and the way that you begin to understand the decisions that she makes, even if you get to the end and you go, I don't know if I would have made that same choice, was really powerful and impactful. And you can tell she's a poet. It was like the way that she uses language to tell stories is just impeccable. I learned a lot of things about Jamaica and Rastafari as a religion that I didn't know about because, as I think I said in the other video, I live in a colonized country, so we don't teach our own history properly, let alone anyone else's. But to learn a little bit about that and to start doing a little bit of digging and to try and understand it more was really interesting. Then I read Paladin's Faith by T. Kingfisher, which is the final book in the Saint of Steel series. So this is the fourth and final book. There is going to be a spin-off series, and you can tell that by the end of this book. I love this book so much. Again, this was a book that I wanted to read to conclude a series for this year. So that's another tick on that list. And I don't know what it is about T. Kingfisher's fantasy romance, but they are just so well done. This is the first book in the series that I've actually read with my eyeballs. I've listened to the other three books on audio. So this was a new experience as well in terms of the format that I was reading it in, and I really, really enjoyed it. It is Shane's story. So Shane is one of the paladins, and in this world, the paladins that we follow are the paladins of a dead god, a god who was killed, and when he was killed, most of his paladins went mad. They either killed each other or were killed because they were killing other people. But 6 paladins survived. And with this book, we have followed 4 of them, and we've met the other 2. So there are 4 men and 2 female paladins. Shane is an interesting duck, is what I'll say. He really needs a hug, but he doesn't believe that he needs a hug. Marguerite, who is a character we met in the very first book, she was the best friend of the female protagonist in the first book, has come back. She needs help. She goes to the Temple of the White Rat, who are kind of the lawyers and accountants of this world, and she asked to borrow some paladins to help her investigate a political plot that's going on. Shane and Ren are assigned to her, and it's the story of Shane and Marguerite falling in love, and it was really, really delightful because they are total opposites in characters. She is a spy, and she is unashamedly a spy. She lies as easily as she breathes, which Shane doesn't understand. And as we read the story, we begin to learn more about Shane and the fact that he's technically been loyal to 2 gods in his life. The god that has died, but also another god. And this has a profound impact on him because he believes he was rejected by the first god, who he had basically started to commit his life to, and then he became a paladin of the Saint of Steel. And so it's really interesting. It plays with the idea of religion and belief and all of that sort of concept, but in a really interesting way. All of these books are like giant road trips. Characters are often traveling from one place to the other. And yes, it's long, but it never feels like it's overdone. And it never feels like things have been included for the sake of drawing out the story. Not only do you have the political intrigue plot, there is also a demon-led cult that is in the sort of the 3rd act of the story. And that sets up a whole bunch of stuff for the spin-off that I'm so excited about and I just cannot wait to read. But it's kind of hard to talk about without spoiling anything. So I thought this was a really wonderful wrap up to this series. I may or may not have bought myself the hardcover books because this series has been picked up. I love the covers of this series and look, Orbit is not bad in terms of the covers that they do, but I just don't trust them to do something as awesome as these covers. So I have bought myself these covers. Why not? I also read Fury by Anna Hackett. This is the Fury Brothers book 1. This series and anything you read by Anna Hackett are basically short, fast-paced romantic suspense stories with alpha heroes. So if you don't like any of those things, skip them because you're gonna hate them, because all of the main male characters are always over the top. The female characters usually do something entirely stupid, like in the case of this book. But when you want a palate cleanser and you want something fast-paced and just ridiculous, like, they are great. But if you cannot get past those other things, yeah, you'll hate them. So this is the story of Miller, who is a woman who is trying to escape her past. She got caught up in something unintentionally through her boss, and she has been trying to hide from him ever since because people are trying to kill her. And she ends up getting hired as a bartender at a bar owned by Dante Fury. And the Fury brothers are 5 brothers who all came through the foster care system and banded together and basically are some of the wealthiest men in New Orleans. He recognizes that she is hiding something, and when she is attacked at his bar, is unhappy with the situation because no one gets attacked at his bar, but also he's intrigued by her, and he doesn't realize that he's starting to have actual feelings for her. And so in order to protect her, he proposes that they pretend to be together because his name carries a lot of weight, and it sort of goes from there as they try and uncover sort of the political plot that's going on behind the people who are trying to kidnap and kill Miller and people who are trying to muscle into the Furies' territory. It's a very action-packed little book and I enjoyed it as a palate cleanser from some of the heavier stuff that I was reading this week. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about in this video is Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. This is the second book in the Murderbot Diary series. I did buddy read this with Heather from Here Booktubes. I was immersive reading this with the graphic audio. I think I've talked a couple of times in videos. I'm doing a reread of the series because I'm trying to wrap my head around the last book in the series, and I think I just need to read it again after I have recently reread the rest of the series with my eyeballs. Murderbot is a security cyborg character thing who has hacked its own governor module. It has been freed and is the property of the ruler of preservation, but Murderbot is deeply uncomfortable with that and kind of escapes and is on its own. And in this story, it comes across Art, who is a research transport vessel that has a sentient bot who is much smarter than Murderbot is at times, and the two strike up this unlikely friendship through watching a whole lot of media videos. And Murderbot is trying to get to a planet where they believe that they caused a mass massacre, but they can't trust their own memory, so they want to go and find the evidence. And so it is their journey trying to get to that station, but also coming across a young group of researchers who are struggling to get control back of their research. And so even though Murderbot likes to avoid humans because humans are messy and complicated and have emotions and do things that they don't really want to have to deal with, they can't help but help protect humans because that's what they do, and it also gives Murderbot an in to this planet. So it's fast-paced. Considering how short this book is, there is so much packed into these little novellas, and that's part of the beauty of the series, so I thoroughly enjoyed going back to this one. So thanks, Heather, for buddy reading it with me. So those are the books that I read this week. In the comments, I would love to know if you have read any of them or if you're planning on picking any of them up. If you are, feel free to let me know down below. Otherwise, feel free to share what you have been reading this week or leave me a sword emoji to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.